Hi, I'm Lisa K. Donner, along with Andrew Moran, Sarah Cowgill, Graham Noble, and Dave Patterson. And this is the Conservative Five, Liberty Nation's online TV news program. Twitter executives held court on Capitol Hill this week. Their long-awaited testimony before a House committee had its testy moments. It was a cathartic and long-awaited moment this week for those who believe there is too much interference by tech giants in American society. The nation's capital was all a Twitter. I'm sorry, I just couldn't resist. So who showed up and whatever did they disclose? Graham, you're just waiting to be tapped into play. What insights can you share on this?
As with most congressional hearings, you wonder what the point of it all was really, and the reason why I say that is because so few times does anything concrete action come out of these things. But in terms of this one, here's the thing: you've got basically once again executives or former executives of a private company being hauled up in front of the Congressional Oversight Committee, which would normally be very troubling. But in this case, of course, there was evidence. I'd say not more than evidence. In fact, there was proof of collusion between the Biden presidential campaign of 2020 and various other government officials, federal government officials, collusion between them and Twitter to suppress certain stories, not just the central story here, which is the Hunter Biden laptop story, but various other stories, various other narratives that the establishment didn't approve of regarding, COVID and things like that. But here's the thing. We had three former Twitter executives go up there on Capitol Hill, and they essentially were predictably evasive. Two of the three of them said, "Well, I don't even recall, talking to anyone from the FBI about censoring any articles." And considering that one of those former Twitter executives was James Baker, who himself is a former FBI official, who was also involved in the whole Trump-Russia collusion investigation, but that's another story. If anyone from Twitter you'd think would have actually been speaking directly to someone at the FBI, it would have been James Baker, because he knows those guys. Right. So the fact that he said that he doesn't ever recall either speaking to anyone is a bit iffy. But here's the thing about the hearing itself. The Democrats are still going to lengths to try to bury this whole Hunter Biden story. Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez actually kind of erupted in faux outrage during the hearing and said that it was a half fake story, which seems a bit curious because which half of that story is fake now? And she started saying, well, we should be talking about voting rights and we should be talking about healthcare and all this kind of stuff. And it's, well, no, not at a House Oversight Committee hearing. You shouldn't be talking about any of those things. So it was nonsense. And then Cori Bush, another Democrat, actually chimed in and suggested that the government take over the internet altogether to make sure that the public is protected against misinformation.
Wow, just move to China. They do that there.
Yep. Exactly.
My God. Sarah, I listened to quite a bit of this, and I thought it was pretty interesting. It was pretty testy. The Republicans were really putting their feet to the fire. And the one guy said, I knew this was wrong at the time. We said it was wrong within a day, but of course they didn't do anything about it. They kept the New York Post off Twitter for a couple of weeks. They said they were wrong, but they didn't do anything about it for a couple of weeks.
Well, the Democratic Party is very good at deflecting anything that is thrown their way. They're good at it. They're good at dodgeball. They've turned the stories around. They've turned the narrative to fit what they want. I mean, they were defunding the police 2 years ago, and now, the State of the Union, it was all about our boys in blue. They are now protectors of the great environment. And when pressed, instead of asking questions at the congressional hearing, they're talking about solutions. All this is an investigation. And instead they're throwing out alternative solutions, their narrative, we should be talking about voting rights and stuff like that. They're all prepped to say that, because the more, the public hears that same message, the more that's all they're going to talk about. And that's how the Democrats, especially on Capitol Hill, get away with all this stuff.
That's how they roll. That's exactly how they roll. They're playing dodgeball and the Republicans are playing whack-a-mole. Andrew, you are, I'll let it be known, the voice of Liberty Nation on Twitter. So you have your finger on the tweet button all day long. What do you make of this hearing? Is this, you think this is a much ado about nothing, or they deserve to be called on the carpet?
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, if a platform with hundreds of millions of people are colluding with the federal government and intelligence agencies and suppressing information and targeting accounts, yeah, of course you should have public hearings about it. And you
started with the word "if." We know that to be true, though.
Yeah, of course. If you go on libertynation.com, we've done a great job covering all the Twitter files I've released over the last couple of months. There was a great moment during the hearing. It was between Congressman Byron Donalds and UL Roth. He's one of the Twitter executives, and they were sharing all these different Former, yes. Right. And he showed the emails between Roth and a couple of the FBI agents, and there were these tweets in that email, and there were Roth had a response saying, "Handle these." And Donald asked him, "Okay, so who did you contact with?" And then Roth said, "Oh, I don't know." And then, but he could say what exactly was inside of those tweets. So this whole hearing was, you didn't get a lot of information, because the whole time it was, when they didn't want to answer a question, was, "I don't recall, I don't know." And how can you get away with that? That's what I want to know. Perhaps Graham can explain that. But how can all these people get away with just saying, "I don't know," when clearly they're exposing themselves as liars in these comments?
I think their memories are erased in chambers. I mean, that's just the way it works.
Dave, I'm going to give Dave 1 second here. You and I both know they've got their finger on the trigger and they're pressing the button, and it's not for conservatives.
No, absolutely not. I mean, the problem and really troubling aspect of all of this is that right now we talk about, social issues, and we talk about the New York Post, but when things are suppressed that have to do with national security, and they can easily do that and have done it in the past, where it doesn't comport with the Biden narrative, this is a problem, because people who need to know in order to vote intelligently are not able to do so when it comes to national security.
Right. Plus, a lot of press is not covering. They're not covering the Twitter files, Andrew. I mean, Liberty Nation's been covering them end to end. But
I think the Media Research Center, they came out with a study, and they tried to assess the networks, how much did they cover the Twitter files over the last month, and most of them was just 0 minutes. Nobody wants to touch it, because a lot of the mainstream media, they've been exposed these Twitter files too, especially on the Russia front, where they just regurgitated whatever was said by the intelligence community without diving deeper into saying, okay, what was false, what was not false. And another thing with the Twitter executives too is that they were a lot more cautious behind the scenes than what these hearings show, which is, I find, baffling, because it showed that a lot of them were responsible. A lot of them had questions. A lot of them pushed back of what the intelligence community said, and they didn't like how the federal government and a lot of these senators tried to peddle this false information onto them and force them to act in a certain way that they wanted. So I don't know why they didn't try to highlight that respect during these hearings.
Graham, I cut you off, so we're going to go back to you real quick.
No, that's fine. I think the central issue here, and I wrote this in my most recent article, is that in a society that supposedly values freedom of speech and freedom of thought, probably above all else, the default for these content moderators on social media platforms, the default should be for disclosure. In other words, if they see some kind of news article or opinion or research document or whatever it is posted to their platform, when they look at it, they shouldn't be saying to themselves, well, is this, do we have any evidence at all that what is in this article is true? And if we don't, the default should be, well, we publish it anyway. We can let people do their own research, make up their own minds, more information rather than left. Instead, what is happening is the default for left-leaning media outlets is that. You know,
Exactly.
whereas the default for conservative stories, articles coming from conservative outlets, the default is, well, since we don't know this is true, we're going to call it misinformation and we're going to suppress it.
Mhm.
And that's a problem.
The most egregious case of this is the Hunter Biden laptop story. And now, you know, his legal team has gone on the offensive and they're basically saying, you know, it was his laptop. So, you know, this is far from over with the Hunter Biden business, but Americans have been teased and somewhat satisfied with the ongoing release of the Twitter files so far. But testifying before Congress, you know, really takes it up a notch. We'll keep you in the loop. Thanks, panel. That's it for our Conservative 5 panel today. Check out our other C5 shows and segments on your favorite video platform. YouTube, Vimeo, Rumble, we're on them all. As well, Liberty Nation has its own Roku channel where you can see all of our productions. Thanks for tuning in, and remember, surf on over to libertynation.com. Special thanks to our fantastic editor and post coordinator. He's a little quirky, but we love him, Frank Diorio, and our executive producer, Sarah Colgill. I'm Lisa K. Donner, editor-in-chief. Thanks so much for joining us today. This has been a production of libertynation.com, where truth is making a comeback.